He stood there, embarrassed and vulnerable, and I realized no one had ever really helped him with something this personal before. But should I? His eyes didn't meet mine. He just looked down, like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Shoulders hunched. Breathing shallow. He looked like a boy again. Not a 19-year-old young man, but a scared, confused little boy who didn't know who else to turn to. And in that moment, everything inside me twisted. I should have walked away. I should have said, "Talk to your dad." Or just laughed it off and made it all go away with some awkward, dismissive joke. But I didn't. I stood there, frozen in place, heart thudding in my chest, trying to pretend that this wasn't happening. That this wasn't the moment everything started to shift. You know when something feels too close, too intimate, but it's dressed up as innocent concern? That's what this felt like. Like a hug that lingers too long. A look that's just a little too deep. A silence that's screaming with everything you're afraid to admit out loud. I didn't see it coming. Not like this. It wasn't some steamy affair or scandalous moment from a movie. It was real. Raw. Messy. Quiet. And human. That's what people don't understand when they hear stories like this. They want a villain. They want someone to point a finger at. But real life? It's so much messier than that. It's a mix of love, loneliness, shame, and sometimes this aching need to feel seen. To feel wanted. Even if just for a second. He didn't ask for any of this. Neither did I. And yet, here we were. You ever find yourself in a moment so heavy it pulls at your chest, makes it hard to breathe? Like you know you're about to step into something you can't step out of again? That's what this moment was. It started with something small, something I didn't think twice about. A question, a hesitation, a look. But what started as a motherly concern turned into something I can't take back. And now, everything has changed. My marriage, my home, the way I look at myself in the mirror. The worst part? I still don't know if I did the right thing, or the worst thing imaginable. So if you're here expecting a clear line between right and wrong, you might not find it. But if you're here to feel something real, if you've ever been lonely, confused, or broken in silence, then keep listening. Because this story, it's about more than what happened. It's about why it happened. And maybe, just maybe, you'll understand. But before I take you down this emotional rabbit hole, please make sure you subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga. We explore true, heart-wrenching stories where love, loyalty, and morality collide in ways you never see coming. Don't forget to hit the bell icon and like this video. It helps more than you know, and it tells me you want more stories like this. Let's begin. I was 38 when I married Mark. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, nothing dramatic or passionate. It was quiet, comfortable, predictable. After a messy divorce and years of raising my daughter alone, I thought that's what I needed, something stable, something safe. Mark was that. Steady, hardworking, always calm. But I should have noticed how rarely he smiled. How often his eyes drifted over me like I was furniture. We got married in spring. By fall, I was already spending most evenings alone. He started working late. At first, I believed him. Meetings. Last-minute calls. Deadlines. I nodded, understanding. Supportive. Patient. The good wife. But the truth is, he wasn't coming home late because he had to. He just didn't want to be there. The house we moved into was beautiful. Big. Polished floors. High ceilings. Open concept everything. But the quiet? It echoed. It made everything feel colder. I'd light candles in the living room, just to trick myself into thinking someone else was nearby. There were nights I'd make dinner and set 3 places. One for me, one for Mark, and one for Jason. Most of the time, I ate alone. Jason was 19. Mark's son from his first marriage. His mom left when he was barely 4. She just packed her things and walked out. No warning, no explanation. And Mark never talked about it. He just shut that chapter and never opened it again. Jason didn't talk much either. He wasn't rude, just quiet, reserved. Always had earbuds in or his hoodie up. He wasn't the type to lash out or get into trouble. But there was a sadness in him, one that never said a word, but always hovered close. I tried to reach out. I really did. Little things, you know? Making his favorite snack. Asking about his classes. Sitting near him when he watched TV. He'd nod, maybe smile a little. But I could feel the wall. Thick. High. Always there. Sometimes we'd have moments. Tiny slivers of connection. Like when he helped me carry groceries and told me about a teammate who sprained his ankle. Or when I mentioned a show I liked, and he quietly said, "Yeah, I've seen that one." But those moments were rare. Like catching sunlight through the trees, fleeting. Fragile. And still, I looked forward to them. It was strange. The way I felt more noticed by Jason than by my own husband. Mark barely touched me anymore. He'd come home, mumble a hello, pour himself a drink, and head to his study. He'd stay there for hours. I'd knock sometimes, ask if he wanted dinner. He'd say, "Not hungry," or "Already ate." Then the door would close again. Sometimes I'd lie in bed beside him, our bodies not even grazing, and wonder if he'd notice if I just got up and left. The loneliness wasn't loud. It was subtle. Like a drip you don't notice until the floor starts rotting underneath. I started staying up later, watching movies alone, folding laundry in silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator like it was the only conversation I'd get that night. Jason would sometimes pass through the hallway. He'd nod if our eyes met. Sometimes he wouldn't. I didn't blame him. I was just the woman his dad married. Not mom. Not family. Just there. Still, I noticed things. How he stopped coming down for breakfast. How he'd wait until I left the kitchen to grab a plate. How he'd startle a little when I called his name. How his eyes stayed on the floor a few seconds longer when we spoke. At first, I chalked it up to teenage awkwardness. Hormones. Growing pains. But there was something else. Something that lingered in the silence between us. One evening, I caught him staring at me. Not in a creepy way, more like he was trying to read something on my face. Like I was a puzzle he didn't understand. I smiled. He looked away. And then I felt it. The shift. Not a big one. Barely noticeable. Like the first subtle bend in a bridge right before it starts to crack. I didn't think much of it then. I had enough on my mind. I told myself I was imagining things. But I wasn't. Looking back now, that was the moment I should have paid attention. That small, flickering warning in my gut. The feeling that something was beginning. Quietly. Slowly. And that whatever it wasn't going to stay innocent for long. It started with laundry. A regular Tuesday. Nothing special. The sun was barely peeking through the blinds, and the house was dead quiet, just the low buzz of the washing machine and my own thoughts echoing back at me. I was folding shirts, Mark's stiff button-ups, my soft cotton tees, and Jason's gym clothes. His soccer jersey was damp with sweat, crumpled like he'd peeled it off in a rush. I shook it out, pressed it flat, and then reached for the rest of his laundry. That's when I saw them. His boxer shorts. I froze. They were inside out, bunched up, but there was something. A shape. Something I wasn't prepared to see. My breath caught without warning, and my hands trembled slightly as I tried to pretend it was nothing. Just fabric. Just laundry. But my eyes lingered. And in that moment, something entirely uninvited slipped into my mind. I looked away fast. Folded them quickly, shoved them into the basket like they were burning my fingers. But it was too late. The image had already settled in my head like fog I couldn't clear. I told myself it was just a fluke. A passing thought. A moment of discomfort that meant nothing. But later that day, when Jason walked through the front door, limping slightly, my stomach tightened. He tried to hide it, that limp. Tried to play it off like he was just stiff. But I saw his face. The wince. The hesitation in each step. He headed straight toward the stairs. I called after him. "Are you okay?" He paused, barely glancing back. "Yeah, just sore." I followed him without thinking. "Did you get hurt at practice?" He stopped halfway up the stairs, back turned to me. His shoulders rose and fell, slow and heavy. Then, without looking, he said, "It's just hard to deal with sometimes." My heart skipped. What is? I asked. There was a beat of silence. Then he muttered, just stuff, and disappeared into his room. His door clicked shut and I stood there, staring at it. That word stuff, it lingered. It carried weight. It carried something else. Something he didn't want to say out loud. I went back downstairs and sat on the edge of the couch, but I couldn't focus on anything. My mind kept circling that moment like it had teeth. What did he mean by that? Was it an injury? Was it something deeper? Or was I reading into something that wasn't there? I told myself to let it go, that I was being ridiculous. But the truth was, I couldn't. My body was restless and my chest felt tight, like my heart was beating too loud for the quiet room. That night, I made dinner, but no one ate. Mark didn't come home again. Jason stayed upstairs. I sat alone at the dinner table, staring at the full plates, and felt the emptiness creep in like a chill. And when I finally crawled into bed, wrapped in sheets that felt too cold and too wide, I couldn't sleep. My eyes stayed on the ceiling, unmoving. All I could think about was Jason. That look on his face. The way he limped. The awkward way he stood still when I spoke to him. Like he didn't know how to be in his own body. And I couldn't stop wondering, what exactly was he struggling to deal with? And more than that, why was my heart beating so fast? I should have ignored it. I should have folded those clothes, shut the laundry room door, and walked away like nothing ever crossed my mind. But I didn't. Something in me, a quiet, aching need to feel needed, kept digging, kept watching, kept caring, in ways I wasn't supposed to. I kept telling myself it was motherly concern, that it was my job to care, to notice, to check in. But the truth? It wasn't just about him. It was about me too. Because nobody else was paying attention to Jason. His dad certainly wasn't. Mark hadn't asked about his son's day in months. He didn't know what college Jason was thinking about. Didn't notice the limp, or the silence, or how long he stayed shut up in that room. And nobody was paying attention to me, either. I used to be touched. Not just physically, but emotionally. Mark used to run his hand down my back while I washed dishes. Whisper to me when we laid in bed. Laugh at my stupid little stories. I used to be seen. Now? I wasn't even sure I existed to him anymore. I'd walk into a room, and it was like I brought a breeze, not a presence. Cold and barely there. So when Jason asked me one night, out of nowhere, what makes a man normal? I froze. He was sitting at the kitchen table, fiddling with his phone, not looking at me. And then he said, "Hey, can I ask you something weird?" I said sure, without thinking. He asked, "How do guys know if something's wrong with them? Like physically?" I blinked. My breath caught. I felt the flush rise to my cheeks. But I kept my voice calm. "What do you mean?" He just shrugged. Said it casually. Like, when you're not like everyone else. You know? I didn't know how to answer. I just smiled. Soft. Careful. Told him. Everybody's different. There's no normal, really. He looked at me for a second, just a second, and nodded. Okay. But that moment sat heavy between us. That wasn't a teenage boy asking about puberty. That was a young man asking about his body, about how he felt different, about how that difference weighed on him in private. And I had no idea what to do with that. I should have brushed it off. Sent him to his father. But Mark wouldn't have answered. Mark would have scoffed or ignored it or made him feel small. And I couldn't let him feel small. Not when I knew what that felt like. There were more questions after that. Not all at once. Slowly. Quietly. Over days. Little things. Do girls care about size? Does being too different scare people away? What if someone feels uncomfortable in their own body? Each question was a whisper. A reach. A hand held out in the dark, hoping for something to hold on to. And each time, I told myself I was just being supportive. Just giving him the reassurance no one else would. But inside me, something was shifting. I felt flattered. And then, confused by feeling flattered. Because these weren't just questions. They were confessions, wrapped in insecurity. And I was the only one hearing them. The only one allowed into that private space. And every time he opened that door, I stepped through without hesitation. Even when I knew I shouldn't. The nights got longer. The house got quieter. Mark came home later, left earlier, barely acknowledged me. I'd lay in bed wondering when I became a ghost in my own life. And then, one night, I heard a knock on my bedroom door. Soft, hesitant. 3 gentle taps. My heart stopped. Because I knew it wasn't Mark. And I knew, deep down, that once I opened that door, things might never go back to the way they were. I opened the door. He stood there in the dim hallway light, hands buried in the sleeves of his hoodie, eyes low like he was afraid to meet mine. And I didn't say a word. I just stepped aside. He walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure if he should have. Like this wasn't something he'd planned, but something that pulled him, almost against his will. I sat at the edge of the bed. He stayed standing. It was quiet for a while. That kind of silence that hums in your ears. The kind that makes your heart feel too loud in your chest. Then he said it. They laugh at me. I looked up, confused. Who? He swallowed. The guys in the locker room. At practice. I wanted to ask why, but I waited. He looked so raw. So stripped down. He glanced at me, just once. Then looked away. They think something's wrong with me. Like I'm some kind of freak. I could feel something knotting in my stomach. I kept my voice soft. What are you talking about? His cheeks were red. His hands tightened in his sleeves. I didn't ask to be like this. I didn't try to be different. It's not something I can control. I nodded slowly, giving him space. Different how? He paused, then whispered, you know how some guys are just built different? I said nothing. He looked like he wanted to vanish. I hate it, he said, voice cracking. It's uncomfortable. It hurts sometimes. I can't even wear certain pants without people noticing. I hate the attention. I stood up, walked over, and sat next to him. Not too close, just enough for him to know I wasn't running away. You're not a freak, I said, trying to sound stronger than I felt. He didn't believe me. I could see it in his face. That wall he always had, it was cracking now. They whisper about me. Laugh. Even the coach avoids eye contact sometimes. It's like, I don't know. Like I'm not allowed to exist this way. I reached out, gently rested my hand on his shoulder. Jason, listen to me. There's nothing wrong with you. He finally looked at me. There was so much pain in his eyes. So much doubt. You're normal, I said. Then paused. You're more than normal. You're perfect just the way you are. I regretted that word the second it left my mouth. Perfect. But it hung in the air, thick and warm. And he smiled. Not a wide smile. Not a boyish grin. It was soft. Like a small piece of him had been waiting desperately to hear someone say that. Like he'd been starving for it. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat there. I could feel his shoulder warm against mine. I didn't pull away. That night, something between us shifted. After that, things changed. He started coming downstairs more. Hanging around the kitchen while I cooked. Asking questions. Little things. What I was watching. What I was reading. He even started offering to help. Chopping vegetables, drying dishes, standing beside me like it was the most natural thing in the world. We started watching shows together in the evenings. Just the two of us. On the couch. A pillow between us at first. Then, over time not. He laughed more. Smiled more. And so did I. It was strange how easy it felt. How natural. Like this little pocket of warmth had opened up in the middle of my cold, quiet life. A secret little world that only we existed in. And I knew. I knew how dangerous that feeling was. But I let it grow anyway. One night, he made me tea without asking. Brought it to me like it was normal. Like it was something he did all the time. Another night, we watched an old movie. One I'd seen a dozen times, but somehow felt new with him sitting there, leaning just a little closer as the minutes passed. I started noticing the way he looked at me. Not just glanced, looked. Like I was something to be studied. Like I mattered. And God help me, I didn't hate it. I told myself it was innocent. That we were just two lonely people finding comfort in each other's company. But deep down, I knew that wasn't the whole truth. There was an energy in the room when we were alone. Something thick, quiet, charged. One evening, after another long stretch of silence, he stood up and said, "Can I show you something?" I nodded. He reached into the pocket of his hoodie and pulled out a folded piece of paper. At first, I thought it was something he'd written. A poem. A drawing. But it wasn't that. He held it out to me, hands shaking slightly. I took it slowly, and when I unfolded it, I froze. It was a photo. Of him. Of that part of him. Nothing explicit, but suggestive. Enough to make my breath catch. I looked at him, stunned. "Jason, why would you?" He interrupted me, voice trembling. "Because I don't know if I'm okay. And you're the only one who's ever made me feel like I was." I should have looked away. But I didn't. It was raining hard that night. The kind of rain that drowns out your thoughts, steady, relentless, tapping against the windows like it had something to say. Thunder rolled low and deep, and every now and then, the sky cracked open with light. I sat on the couch, arms wrapped around my knees, watching the flicker of shadows dance on the wall. The house felt even quieter than usual. Mark was away on a business trip, some out-of-town conference he barely told me about. Jason was upstairs, or so I thought. And then the power went out. Everything snapped to black in an instant. No hum of the fridge. No glow from the TV. Just the storm outside and the sudden stillness inside. I lit a few candles from the drawer and sat back down. The flames' glow softened the room, made it feel smaller, warmer somehow, but my chest still felt tight. A few minutes passed and I heard footsteps. Jason appeared in the doorway. His face lit up in the candlelight, pale and unreadable. "Power's out," he said quietly, already knowing the answer. I nodded. "Yeah." He hesitated. Then walked in and sat beside me. Close. Closer than usual. His hoodie was damp from the window he must have left cracked open, and I could smell the rain on his skin. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then he shivered. "Cold?" I asked. He nodded, almost embarrassed. I reached for the blanket draped over the back of the couch. Pulled it around both of us. It was second nature. Thoughtless. Or maybe not. His body leaned into mine just a little. The candles flickered. Thunder rumbled again. And then, he whispered it. "Can I ask you something?" My voice came out softer than I intended. "Of course." He stared ahead, his eyes fixed on the flame. What if I'm never enough for someone? What if people always look at me and just walk away? I didn't answer. I couldn't. He looked at me then. Really looked. His eyes weren't filled with lust or boldness. They were full of fear. Desperation. This need to be told that he wasn't broken. "I just want to understand," he said. "I want to know if there's something wrong with me, or if the world just made me feel that way." I swallowed hard. My heart was pounding. My skin warm beneath the blanket, beneath the weight of his words. And yet, my hands were ice. "I don't think there's anything wrong with you," I whispered. "You're not too much. You're not too different. You're just human." He nodded slowly, but I could tell he didn't believe me. Not really. Then, he said something that made the air stop moving. "Would you help me understand?" Not physically, just emotionally. Just tell me what it means. What it feels like. What it's supposed to be. My hands trembled. My mind screamed no. But my heart whispered he needs me. And that whisper was louder than anything else. I turned to him. I didn't speak. Didn't move. His hand brushed mine beneath the blanket. Fingers soft and unsure, barely touching. But that touch burned through me. Our eyes met. I saw every unspoken question in his. And I let the silence answer. I didn't pull away. I didn't stop him. And he didn't stop me. A tear welled in my eye before I even understood why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe relief. Maybe both. But that night, something broke. Or maybe it finally gave in. The next morning, the house felt different. Not quieter, just heavier. Like the walls themselves were holding their breath. I got up early, hoping somehow that the stillness would clear my head, that making coffee or wiping down the kitchen counter would make me feel normal again. But my hands shook as I rinsed the mug. My chest ached in a way I couldn't name. Jason didn't come down. I waited. I made breakfast. Toast. Eggs. The smell filled the house, but the chair across from me stayed empty. When he finally emerged, hours later, he walked past me without a word. Didn't look up. Didn't pause. Just kept walking. And I just stood there, holding a dish towel, staring at his back like it might turn around. Like maybe he'd give me something, anything. But he didn't. A few minutes later, my phone rang. Mark. I couldn't answer. I stared at the screen until it went black. His name flashing there felt like a slap. I couldn't hear his voice. Not today. Not after last night. I tried to act normal. Folded the blanket from the couch. Opened windows. Turned on soft music. But everything I did felt wrong, too loud, too fast, too exposed. Jason stayed in his room. He didn't come down for lunch. Didn't text. Didn't even ask about dinner. That night, his bedroom door was locked. I stood outside it for a moment, hand resting on the knob like that would bring back the silence we used to share. The quiet comfort. The way we used to exist in the same space without needing to say much. But now, even silence felt dangerous. I didn't knock. I just stood there until I heard movement behind the door. Then footsteps. Then nothing. He was pulling away from me. And it cut deeper than I expected. The next day, he left the house early. Didn't say where he was going. Came back late. Avoided eye contact. Ate nothing. It went on like that. For days. And I started to wonder, had I ruined the only bond one had left? Maybe I broke something in him. Or maybe he just saw me differently now. Maybe he regretted it. Or maybe he didn't, and that scared him more than anything. I replayed that night 100 times in my head. I didn't stop him. He didn't stop me. But maybe we both should have. The guilt didn't scream. It whispered. Constantly. A dull throb beneath everything I did. I'd glance at him during those rare moments he passed through the kitchen or living room, but he never looked up. He was slipping away. And there was nothing I could do. One evening, I walked past his room and saw the door slightly cracked. He was sitting at his desk. Shoulders hunched. Elbows tight. Writing. His notebook was open in front of him, pen moving quickly, like he was trying to get something out before it swallowed him whole. Then, he stopped. Tucked the pen inside the spine. Closed the notebook gently, like it held something fragile. Precious. And he hid it. Not just placed it aside, hid it. Under a loose floorboard near his bed. I watched through the crack in the door, frozen. He never saw me. I stepped back quietly, heart pounding. What was in that notebook? Was it about me? Us? Was he blaming me? Or protecting me? Or neither? I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing the way he folded that page. The way his shoulders curled in, like he was shielding himself from the world. Or from what he was writing. I wanted to knock. I wanted to ask. But I didn't. Because part of me was terrified to know the answer. I thought I was helping him. I told myself that over and over again. That he needed comfort. That he needed someone to tell him he was okay. That I was just giving what no one else had ever offered him, acceptance. Safety. Understanding. But deep down, I think I knew. Maybe I wasn't really trying to help him. Maybe I was trying to fill something in me. The silence in this house. The way Mark stopped seeing me. The empty bed. The meals made for 3 and eaten alone. The mirror that showed me a face slowly fading into background noise. I was starving for connection. And when Jason reached out, I didn't just take his hand. I clung to it. Now I walk through this house and it feels unfamiliar. Like everything shifted an inch to the left and I'm the only one who notices. Like I'm living inside a memory that doesn't know where to go. I keep thinking, should I tell Mark? Would that be some twisted form of honesty? Or just another knife? Sometimes I imagine packing a bag, leaving, vanishing, starting over somewhere I don't have to carry the secret like a stone tied to my ankle. But I don't move, because I'm not even sure I deserve to start over. Forgiveness feels like something that belongs to someone else. Someone better. Someone who made a mistake without seeing it coming. But I saw this coming. I saw it long before that night. In the way he looked at me. In the way I started looking back. In every unspoken moment we let linger too long. I blurred the line between mother and woman. And I can't unblur it now. I don't even know who I am in this story anymore. The protector? The villain? The lonely wife? The woman who crossed a line she swore she never would? Maybe I'm all of them. Maybe that's what makes this so hard to carry. And now, there's this note. He left it on my nightstand 3 nights ago. No envelope. Just folded paper. I saw it the second I walked in. My name written in his careful, hesitant handwriting. I picked it up, held it between my fingers like it might burn through me. But I haven't opened it. Not yet. Because part of me doesn't want to know what he said. And part of me already does. Have you ever done something you truly believed was right in the moment, but later, no matter how many ways you turned it over in your mind, you couldn't justify it? Not to yourself. Not to anyone. That's where I'm sitting now. Not because I set out to hurt anyone. Not because I wanted to cross a line. But because I was human and weak in a moment that felt like it mattered more than anything else in my life. Was I a terrible person? Or was I just a lonely soul, aching to be seen? I don't know anymore. And maybe that's why I'm telling this. Because I need to know what you think. Have you ever felt like that? So empty that even the smallest bit of connection felt like salvation? Was I wrong for letting it go that far? Was he wrong for asking me to? Please, tell me in the comments. Be honest. Be kind. Be whatever you need to be. But don't be silent, because silence is what got me here in the first place. And if this story stirred something in you, if it made you think, or feel, or question anything in your own life, then don't forget to like this video. It helps more than you know. Subscribe to Shocking Infidelity Saga for more real stories, stories that challenge the heart, blur the lines, and dive into the messy, painful, deeply human parts of love, trust, and betrayal. And hit the bell icon. Because next time, the confession might be yours.